Most people believe trust builds in a straight line. Do a little, get a little. Do it a little more, get a little more. Steady, predictable, proportional. That belief is wrong, and it's the reason why so many businesses quit right before they would have won. Trust does not add up in a straight line. Trust compounds. It builds on itself, painfully slow at first, and then with startling speed. This single misunderstanding, expecting a straight line when the reality is a compounding curve, explains why most businesses give up on the very strategies that would have worked. It also explains why the few that persist end up with advantages that competitors can't catch. If you run a business, especially as a founder or a professional service, this flat phase is probably happening to you right now. It's likely the exact reason you're tempted to abandon something that was actually working. In this video, I'll show you exactly how trust compounds and why the early phase is so discouraging. I will show you why patience is a strategy rather than just a virtue, and why compounding trust becomes the deepest competitive moat there is. I spent 27 years in B2B marketing. The businesses that eventually dominate their markets are almost never the most gifted ones. They are simply the ones who kept showing up long after it stopped feeling like progress. This is one piece from what I call the silent race, the competition for your buyer's trust that happens before contact. The conversation ecosystem is how you win it, and compounding is the clock the whole race runs on. Let's start with the key difference between adding and compounding, because everything flows from it. Adding is a straight line. Each unit of effort produces a fixed unit of result forever. 10 units of effort, 10 units of results. 20 units of effort, 20 units worth of results. The relationship is steady and even. Most people unconsciously assume trust works the same way. Each bit of marketing produces a matching bit of trust. Compounding is completely different. With compounding, results build on previous results. So each new unit of effort produces more than the last because it has a growing base to build on. The growth is not steady, it speeds up. This is how money grows with compound interest. Slowly at first, then dramatically because you earn returns on your returns. The curve starts nearly flat and then bends up sharply. Trust compounds rather than adds, and the reason is simple once you see it. Trust creates more trust. People who trust you tell others, so your trust spreads beyond your direct effort. Your established reputation makes each new claim more believable, so new trust forms more easily. Each layer of trust makes the next layer faster to build. Trust earns returns on trust, exactly like compound interest. It doesn't add up, it multiplies on itself. This is the deeper engine behind what I call the familiarity advantage. Every repeated exposure does not just add up recognition, it compounds it into trust. This difference seems abstract, but it's a huge practical consequence because adding and compounding behave completely different over time. In the early stages, compounding curve looks worse than the straight line. It's nearly flat, producing little, while the straight line is already climbing steadily. So early on, compounding feels like it's failing compared to simple adding. This is the trap and where most businesses make their fatal mistake. Because here's what happens later. The compounding curve, after its flat beginning, bends upward and quickly overtakes the straight line. Then it leaves it far behind, speeding away. The same effort that looked like it was failing earlier becomes overwhelmingly powerful later once the compounding kicks in. So the entire experience of building trust depends on understanding that you're on a compounding curve and not a straight line. The discouraging early flatness is not a failure. It's a necessary shape of compounding. Run the same curve backwards through silence instead of consistency, and you get its evil twin, what I call attention debt. The same compounding force working against you instead of for you. Let's spend some real time on the flat early phase because it's where the battle is either won or lost. Understanding why it's flat is what gives you the resolve to push through it. In the beginning of building trust, you put in constant effort to see almost nothing in return. You publish, you show up, you provide value, and the results are tiny. This is genuinely discouraging and completely normal. It's the shape of compounding. Why is the early phase so flat? Because compounding needs a base to build on, and in the beginning, you almost have no base. Trust earns returns on existing trust, but when you're starting out, there's barely anything existing that you could earn trust on. So your efforts produce only the small direct result with no compounding multiplier yet. The multiplier needs to build up trust to work on, and you haven't built anything up yet. The flatness is the absence of the base, not the absence of progress. But here's what's actually happening during the flat phase invisibly. You're building the base. Every bit of effort through the early phase, though it produces little visible result, is laying down the foundation of trust that compounding will later multiply. The flat phase is not wasted. It's the essential buildup that makes the later acceleration possible. You're not failing to grow. You're building the base from which explosive growth will eventually come. This is precisely where most businesses quit. They put in effort during the flat phase, they see little reward, and decide it's not working. So they stop, right before the curve is about to bend. They make the necessary flat phase of compounding for failure. They abandon the strategy at the worst possible moment, having done the hard foundational work, and quit before collecting the reward. The flat phase is a filter, and most businesses fail it. Surviving this exact phase is what the conversion ecosystem is built to help you do. Understanding this changes how you experience a flat phase entirely. Instead of seeing a lack of visible results as proof that you're failing, you recognize it as the expected, necessary shape of building something that compounds. You keep going, not on blind faith, you keep going on understanding, knowing the base you're building will eventually multiply, and that flatness is the price of admission to the steep part of the curve that follows. The businesses that win are simply the ones who understand this and refuse to quit during the flat phase. Now, let's talk about the moment everybody is waiting for, the bend. When the flat curve begins to climb and compounding finally kicks in. This is the moment when all that build-up base starts to multiply and the results that were tiny begin to speed up. From the outside, it looks like sudden overnight success. From the inside, you know it was anything but sudden. Here's what actually happens at the bend. You have built enough trust as a base that compounding finally has something real to work on. Now your reputation goes before you, so prospects arrive already warm. People who trust you are referring others, so trust spreads beyond your direct effort. Your established credibility makes each new claim land easily. The returns on your built-up trust start to outweigh the plain effort, and growth speeds up. The base you built on the flat phase has reached the size where it starts to multiply. This is a phenomenon people describe as becoming an overnight success after years of work. The business grinds in obscurity for a long time, building the base invisibly, and then seems to explode onto the scene as if from nowhere. It was not from nowhere, it was an inevitable bend in the compounding curve, arriving exactly when the built-up phase became large enough to multiply. The explosion was years in the making. It only looked sudden to those who didn't see the flat phase. And once the curve bends, the acceleration tends to continue and grow because compounding feeds on itself. More trust brings more referrals and more credibility, which brings still more trust faster. The businesses that push through the flat phase now find itself on the steep part of the curve. The reward for surviving the flat phase is not just a return to normal growth, it is speeding up compounding growth. The lesson of the bend is a big one for how you think about the entire journey. Everything before the bend can feel like failure, and everything after it could look like luck or sudden genius, but both impressions are wrong. The flat phase was necessary buildup, and the bend was the inevitable result of that buildup reaching critical mass. Understanding this lets you stick with the flat phase with confidence, knowing the bend is coming. It also lets you recognize when competitors seem to explode from nowhere, they simply push through the flat phase that you did not see. This brings us to a reframe that changes how you should think about patience entirely. We usually treat patience as a virtue, a nice quality to have, a matter of character. But in the context of compounding trust, patience is more than a virtue. It's a strategy, and maybe the single most powerful strategy available to you. The willingness to stick with the flat phase is what unlocks compounding, and almost nothing else matters as much. Patience is strategic, not just virtuous, for one reason. The compounding curve rewards time more than anything else. Two businesses with identical effort and ability will end up in completely different places based purely on how long they stuck with it. One stayed on the curve to the bend and beyond, while the other quit during the flat phase. The difference in outcome is huge, and it comes entirely from patience. Patience is not a soft quality here, it's the decisive variable. This also means patience is a competitive weapon, because most of your competitors lack it. The flat phase is a filter that weeds out the impatient, and most businesses are impatient, quitting when they don't see quick results. So, The simple willingness to stick with the flat phase, to keep building when others quit, separates you from most of your competitors automatically. You don't have to be more talented or better resourced. You have to be more patient, and patience alone will carry you past everyone who quit. And patience is strategic in a way that's hard for competitors to copy because it can't be bought or rushed. A competitor with more money can't buy their way past the flat stage. They still have to build up the base over time. A competitor can't shortcut compounding. It takes the time it takes. So the advantage you build through patient persistence is protected by the fact that patience itself can't be a shortcut. Your time on the curve is an advantage no amount of resources can instantly replicate. So reframe patience completely. It's not about being calm or a virtuous person. It is a deliberate, strategic decision to stay on the compounding curve through the flat phase and to the bend and beyond. This persistence is what unlocks the compounding, and it's what separates you from the impatient majority. Every quarter you stick with it while competitors quit, you extend an advantage their resources can't buy back. Patience, properly understood, is your most powerful strategic asset. Let's look at why compounded trust, once you have it built, becomes the deepest and most durable competitive advantage there is. A moat that competitors find almost impossible to cross. This is the ultimate reward for pushing through the flat phase, and it's worth understanding it fully because it's what makes the patience worthwhile. Here's the core of it. When you've built up trust over years, you're far up the steep part of the compounding curve. A new competitor, no matter how capable or well-funded, has to start at the bottom in their own flat phase. They can't just instantly have the trust you spent years compounding because trust takes time to build up and it can't be rushed. So you're not just ahead, you're ahead on a curve that speeds up while they're stuck in the flat phase you left long ago. The gap is huge and it's getting bigger. This is completely different from an advantage that can be copied or bought. A competitor can copy your tactics. They can match your pricing. They could copy your features and hire similar people, but they can't copy years of compounding trust because that trust lives in your market's build-up experience of you. Built over time, it can't be compressed. The one advantage that can't be copied or bought is the one that takes time to build, and compounding trust is exactly that. It's protected by time, and compounding trust ultimately closes the gap. The distance between what a buyer needs to believe and what they currently believe. It is the gap a well-funded newcomer can't simply buy their way across. And the moat keeps deepening because compounding continues. While the competitor labors in their flat phase, your trust keeps compounding on its large base. So you keep pulling further ahead. The gap doesn't just stay put, it widens because you're on the steep part of the curve and they're on the flat part. Every year that passes, the distance between an established, compounded, trusted business and a newcomer grows, making the moat deeper and the catch-up more hopeless. This is why the businesses that dominate their markets long-term are so often the ones that started building trust earliest and stuck with it the longest. They're not necessarily the best or the biggest. They're the ones whose trust has compounded the longest, sitting atop a curve no competitor can quickly climb. Compounding trust is the deepest moat because it's made of time, and time is the one resource no competitor can buy more of. Build it patiently, protect it, and it becomes an advantage that grows more unbeatable every single year. So how do you build compounding trust? The mechanics are simpler than the patience they require. Compounding trust is built through consistently delivering genuine value over time. There's no shortcut and no secret technique. There's consistency, value, and time working together to build up a base of trust that eventually compounds. Let me break down each input. The first input is consistency. Trust compounds through repeated, reliable presence, so showing up consistently is the engine. Each consistent appearance adds to the base, and the regularity itself builds trust, because reliability is trustworthy. Sporadic efforts don't compound well because the gaps let the base stall. Consistent effort, by contrast, keeps adding to the base steadily, which is exactly what compounding needs. Show up reliably over and over, and you feed the compounding engine. The second input is genuine value. The trust that compounds is built on actually helping people, on delivering real value that earns real trust. Hollow or self-serving efforts does not build the kind of trust that compounds. because it does not earn the referrals and credibility that drive the multiplication. Genuine value, by contrast, earns the trust that people share and that makes future claims believable, which is exactly what causes trust to compound. Be genuinely useful, and the trust will build and multiply. The third input is time. This is the one you can't shortcut. Compounding needs time to work, to build up the base, to reach the bend. You can be perfectly consistent and genuinely valuable. You still need to give it some time, because a compounding curve has a flat phase that simply must be lived through. Time is not optional. It's the medium in which compounding happens. You need to accept that it's going to take longer than you want and commit to the time, because the time is what produces the compounding. Put these three together: consistency, genuine value, and the time, and you have a complete formula for compounding trust. The idea is simple. The execution is demanding because it asks you to keep delivering consistency through the long, flat phase before the rewards appear. Most businesses have the ability to do this. What they lack is the patience to sustain it for long enough for the compounding to kick in. Provide consistent, genuine value, give it the time it needs, and trust will compound, slowly at first, and then powerfully into the deepest advantage that you could build. Boiled down, trust does not add in a straight line. It compounds because trust creates more trust. So the curve stays flat and discouraging at first, and then bends sharply upwards. The flat phase is not failure. It's the necessary buildup of a base that compounding will later multiply. And it is exactly where most businesses quit, right before the bend. Push through the flat phase and compounding kicks in, producing the acceleration that looks like overnight success, but really, it was years in the making. This makes patience a strategy rather than just a virtue. It's the decisive variable and a competitive weapon, because most competitors lack it and it can't be bought or rushed. Compounding trust becomes the deepest moat there is, made of time, widening every year, impossible for newcomers to quickly cross. You build it through consistency, genuine value, and time. The simple formula is hard because it demands sticking it out through the flat phase. So don't quit on the flat part of the curve. Keep delivering genuine value consistently. Give it the time it needs, and let trust compound into an advantage no competitor can catch. This is one piece of a larger system, the conversion ecosystem, and every video here builds towards another part of it. If this video is useful, then make sure you watch this next one. Remember, the most visible, the most valuable, the most trusted business in your market wins. The whole point of the conversion ecosystem is to help you build the system that makes you all three.